Okay, hi there. How are you? We are in Unit 6, Genetics, and for a lot of students, this is their favorite unit because it really helps you think about characteristics and why they are the way that they are. But let's take a look at some of the main ideas that we're going to go over in this unit. All of Unit 6 takes place in Chapter 12, so you can access Chapter 12 um, in the Pearson reading to take a look at some of this stuff. All right. How are different forms of a gene distributed to offspring? Where does an organism get its unique characteristics? How can we use probability to predict traits? What are some exceptions to Mendel's principles? How does the environment play a role in how genes determine traits? And what's the difference between meiosis and mitosis? Talked a lot about that in Unit 5, so hopefully that's not too far into you. All right, recall from Unit 1 characteristics that all living things share. There's the whole list there, but what we're really looking at in this unit is paying attention to the fact that all living things reproduce and all living things follow the universal genetic code. And that universal genetic code is referring to deoxyribonucleic acid. In lesson 1 today, we're going to get into the work of Gregor Mendel. And for much of this unit, you're going to feel like I'm just teaching you vocabulary because, like I've said before, there is so much vocabulary in biology. It's such a cornerstone of how we understand biology and how things work. We need to understand the vocabulary that goes into this. So, starting us off with inheritance and heredity. So, the genetic transmission of characteristics from parents to offspring, such as hair, eye, and skin color, all has to do with inheritance or heredity. All right. You've heard these terms before. You might not have thought too much about them, but you really remember, what you inherit, the traits that you inherit from your parents are the reason that we have the physical characteristics that we have. We're going to be revisiting this idea a lot over the next few units, and it's called the central dogma. The central dogma of genetics refers to the flow of information from DNA to RNA to proteins. So your DNA is there. That's the universal genetic code. And it is trapped. Hopefully you recognize this as the nucleus. It's trapped inside the nucleus of your cells. There's your cell membrane. There's your cytoplasm, some Unit 3 stuff. So the DNA is trapped inside of here. However, the DNA holds all of the information that's needed for you to make proteins. So the DNA has this information so that proteins can be made, but the DNA is trapped inside the nucleus. Where do proteins get made? You guessed it, outside of the nucleus. So what has to happen? What has to happen is the DNA copies its information onto a strand of mRNA. We're going to talk more about this amazing molecule later because it's having a moment right now because of the Moderna and Pfizer COVID vaccines are based off of mRNA sequencing, but we'll get back to that another time. Right now, you need to think about the fact that DNA is trapped in here, proteins are made out here. How does this go to this? Copies itself onto some messenger RNA. The messenger RNA can leave the nucleus, come out here, hook up with a ribosome, and make a protein. Why do we care about that? Isn't protein just for like my muscles and stuff? Well, no, proteins have to do with everything. My hair is brown. My hair is brown because I dye it. I'm covering up those grays, but my hair is brown, genetically speaking, because proteins code for a trait. Proteins code for a trait. So my eyes are green because of proteins. My hair is brown because of proteins. And the proteins got that information from the RNA, that got that information from the DNA that came from, that's right, mom and dad. So that's the central dogma of genetics. And if you ever need to just kind of revisit this slide, please feel free to do so because we are going to be really digging into this and thinking about this. More vocab. Homologous chromosomes. Homologous, Remember the prefix? Homo means same. So they are a pair of matching chromosomes, one from each parent. So this is chromosome spot number 1 on a table called a karyotype. I'll come back to that in 1 minute. In spot number 1, you have one of each chromosome, one from mom, one from dad. These are the same chromosomes, but one came from mom and one came from dad. So that's why they're called homologous pairs, because they're the same ones. One was from mom, one was from dad. So if we're a geneticist, we're going to collect these chromosomes during metaphase. Remember, M for middle. The chromosomes were lined up along the middle of the cell. We collect them and we sort them out. We try to figure out which ones are the sex chromosomes, which ones are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, go all the way up to 22. We have 23 pairs. 23 pairs, which equals 46 altogether. These last pairs, this 23rd pair here, X and Y, those are your sex chromosomes. They determine if you're going to be genetically speaking male or female, your gender. XY, you're a guy. XX, you would be considered female. Now, there are some biological instances where you could have XXY. Remember anaphase? Remember when the separation doesn't happen completely? There's lots of organisms that are born with 47 chromosomes instead of 46. You could also have an extra one here at number 21. That's called trisomy 21. It's also known as Down syndrome. Okay, so there's lots of different ways we can analyze this karyotype and learn more about the organism. But homologous chromosomes, we're going to be thinking about these as we move through the unit. One chromosome was inherited from mom and one was inherited from dad. More vocab. Genotype is referring to the genes present in the DNA of an organism. There's always 2 letters that make up your genotype because of one gene coming from mom and one gene coming from dad. So there's always 2 letters involved in the genotype. When we're thinking about those 2 letters, you're either going to have a capital or a lowercase. All right. 2 capital letters could be like a big T, big T. You could have one of each. Mom gives you a big T, dad gives you a little t. Or you could have 2 lowercase letters, little t, little t. Of course, we're going to assign some more scientific language to capital and lowercase and stuff like that. So let's move on. Homozygous genotypes. Now, what did I tell you before? The prefix HOMO means the same. So homozygous genotypes are referring to genotypes that have the same letters. So the big T would be homozygous. The little t would be homozygous. These are the same. Big T, same. Little t, same. Homozygous. Can you guess what what means other? If you said hetero, you are correct. Heterozygous genotypes are referring to genotypes that have one capital and one lowercase. So in our examples of like what we could possibly get from mom and dad, if you get one capital and one lowercase, this would be referred to as heterozygous. The one nice thing about this unit is a lot of the vocabulary comes in pairs. So if you memorize homozygous and heterozygous together, that makes it a little bit easier to remember. There's a little summary of what I just talked about. Looking a little closer at those pairs. Remember we said your genotype is your genes present in your DNA. Your genotype is your genetic code. You could be big T, big T, big T, little t, little t, little t. This is all going to translate into your phenotype. And use our context clues here. Phenotype is referring to our physical characteristics. In other words, how do we apply these genotypes to the physical characteristics of an organism or what the organism looks like? Examples of phenotype. What color are your eyes? What color is your hair? Are you a fruit that has stripes? What color flower are you? Those are all phenotypic characteristics. We'll come back to polygenic inheritance in a little bit. My phone keeps buzzing. I'm going to throw it over there. Okay, now let's add some more vocab. The term allele refers to alternative forms of the same gene. Alleles for a trait are located at corresponding positions on homologous chromosomes called loci. And loci should make you think of location. Location. So putting this all together, let's look back here. We said you could receive a big T from mom, a little t from dad, or a big T from mom, a big T from dad. Let's go with this one. Big T from mom, little t from dad. How does this look on a chromosome? Here's your homologous chromosomes. Where do these T's go? They go in corresponding positions on homologous chromosomes. So if we pretend that these are the chromosomes and we kind of like knocked them over, you would see there's one T from mom, little t from dad, big T from mom, little t from dad. And they will match up next to each other on these homologous chromosomes. You don't want mom's little t or mom's big T to be over here and dad's little t to be over there. You'd be all messed up if that was the case. You want their corresponding chromosomes to be right across from each other on the appropriate loci, because these two are going to work together to make your phenotype. So these are your genotype. One came from mom, one allele came from dad. They're going to come together to make your phenotype or your physical characteristic. We'll get more into that in 1 second. So in this example here, we have homologous chromosomes kind of knocked over on their side. In this instance, big A came from mom, big A came from dad. Okay, little b came from mom, big B came from dad. Big C came from mom, little c came from dad. And these are all alleles. Big A allele came from mom. Big A allele came from dad. All right, so we're building on vocabulary. Take another look at this here. We've got these homologous chromosomes kicked over onto the side again. We're looking at flowers. This is the loci, also known as locus, for the flower color gene. Dad here, daddy flower, gave a purple allele, big P. Mom flower gave a white allele, little p. Okay. What do you think would happen to baby flower? Okay. Big P, purple flower, mates with little p, white flower. When these two come together and have offspring, what color do you think the flowers would be? You've got purple or white, or could it be something else? Most people think that the purple and white are going to mix together and make kind of like a violet flower. And that's not how this works. We need to add some more vocabulary to understand what happens next. One allele masks or hides the effect of the other, and that allele is called dominant. The hidden allele is called recessive. The dominant allele is going to mask the recessive allele. So looking back at our flowers, the baby flower is actually going to come out purple because purple is the dominant color in this case. And we know this because that's what's represented with a capital letter. All right. Dominant letters are represented by capital. Lowercase letters are represent recessive alleles. All right. We're going to take a look at these, and as we go through, I'm going to pause and just give you a minute to think. Dominant genes are genes that overshadow other ones. So in this instance, an Angus cattle, black is dominant, red is not. And if you can see here, there's two red Angus. There's the head. First, when I looked at this, I was like, how does this cow have so many legs? And then I saw its little baby cow face right there. So that's that. All right. Dominant genes are going to mask the others. So you can be homozygous, having two of the same allele, Mom gave you a capital B, dad gave you a capital B. So homozygous for the black fur on this cow, or heterozygous. Mom gave you a capital B, dad gave you a lowercase b, but you're not stirred together combination of red and black. You are masking the effects of the red allele. That is what makes it a dominant gene. Recessive is little b, little b. The only way for this cow to be red would be to receive one little b allele from mom and one little b allele from dad. So vocab on top of vocab on top of vocab. Homozygous recessive, heterozygous dominant, homozygous dominant. Let's look at another one. This is a Hampshire hog. And in a Hampshire hog, having this white band around itself, this white belt, that's a dominant characteristic. We're going to assign it the letter W because we always assign the dominant characteristic the letter. And so this pig here is big W, or homozygous dominant. He could also be big W, little w, or heterozygous dominant. So these are his genotypes, and having a white belt is his phenotype. The only way to have no white belt is to be little w, or homozygous recessive for your genotype, which would leave you with a recessive phenotype, no white belt. Recessive genes are overshadowed by the dominant gene. So whenever there's one dominant and one recessive, you're not going to see that recessive characteristic in the phenotype of the organism. Recessive genes can only express themselves if they are both recessive. Here's some more agricultural terms that I've never heard of before I started teaching this unit. You can have horns if you are a sheep, and that is recessive. Having the horns is recessive to being polled. No horns. Never heard those words before. I just learned them when I started teaching this, which has been a while now, actually. All right, so this sheep could be, his phenotype is polled phenotype, no horns. Homozygous for his polled phenotype. Heterozygous, big P, little p, for his polled phenotype. Recessive, homozygous recessive for being a horned sheep. Black wool is recessive to the white wool. Big W, homozygous. Big W, heterozygous. Little w, homozygous recessive. All right. So when we think about what makes an organism look the way that it looks, we think about nature versus nurture. Traits that are expressed through your genes can be inherited. Characteristics that are acquired through environmental influences, such as injuries or practiced skills, cannot be inherited. I just dropped a lot on you. And so, what I want you to do is take a break, stretch your legs a little bit, get some water, and then you're going to watch this quick video, 2-minute video, to review dominant and recessive genes. Just hear it from another perspective. Then we're going to let my favorite sisters talk to you about DNA, chromosomes, genes, and traits. This is their introduction to heredity. Hear it from another perspective. Then you're going to read chapter 12.1, complete the chapter 12.1 reading quiz, and then work on vocab for homework. Thank you for being here today. I'll talk to you soon.